In college football today, the name of the game is looking out for yourself above basically all else. Whatever you got to do to position yourself better to make the college football playoff, whether it's a coach positioning themselves better to look good to recruits or their own fan base so they can keep their job, the athletic director making the right hire, whatever everybody has to do to put themselves at the top of the heap in whatever category, they will do so. And so it's rare when somebody goes against their own self-interest. And by the way, I can't knock people for going against their self-interest. It's, you got to look out for number one, right? But Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz at SEC Media Days on Thursday really bucked the trend of SEC coaches saying, oh, well, we have to play 8 conference games because in the SEC, it's so difficult. Playing 8 games is like playing 9 games everywhere else. Now, disregard the fact that by playing 8 games in other conferences, namely the Big Ten, playing 9 conference games, that gives the SEC at least 8 more wins every year, which self-inflates their strength of schedules, etc. Eli Drinkwitz just came out and flat out just said, yeah, I think we should probably play 9 games. At minimum, we should all be on the same page because access to the college football playoff is the utmost important thing that anybody could possibly do or care about today in college football, because the chance to win a title coupled with the money, attention, and notoriety that comes with making the college football playoff is vital. You have to do it and you have to have it. And it would probably be against Mizzou's best interests for the SEC to say, we're going to play 9 conference games. Because right now, Mizzou can schedule pretty soft non-conference schedule, truthfully, and have 4 guaranteed wins rather than 3 guaranteed wins. For instance, Indiana's getting a lot of flack right now because they don't have any Power 4 non-conference games scheduled through 2029 or something like that. They just canceled their series with Virginia. They're going to pay $500,000 to get out of it. And you know why? Because it doesn't behoove Indiana to play anybody out of non-conference. And the SEC can continue to argue that we're going to have to reevaluate strength of schedule because Alabama didn't get in the playoff last year, and neither did Ole Miss and South Carolina. Disregard the fact that those teams didn't deserve playoff bids. That's neither here nor there. It doesn't help anybody to play a strong non-conference schedule because if you lose, that's all anybody gives a damn about. And so, for Eli Drinkwitz to come out and say, hey, we should probably play 9 conference games when almost every other SEC coach has been adamant that it should be 8, and they're working on a schedule for 2026. And it sounds like they're going to have a consensus by the end of SEC Media Days. And that number certainly appears as if it's going to be 8 conference games and not 9. But do you know what would be best for college football? Not for college football as a whole, but for the SEC. Now, this isn't for me to decide, but from where I sit, the SEC playing 9 conference games would be the best thing for the sport. Because, first of all, it allows more conference games. Instead of your chicken shit Saturday games the week before Thanksgiving, SEC schools are going to have to play legitimate football teams. Crazy, I know. But then overall, it adds to what I have sat here and told you for probably more than 400 episodes now, is that we don't have enough marquee matchups in the sport. There aren't enough head-to-head matchups of the biggest, best brand names in the sport. How do you rectify that? Especially in a conference like the SEC, you add one more conference game to the schedule year after year after year, and that's how you get it done. Because it's now really easy to make sure that your Oklahoma's, Texas, Texas A&M's, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Auburn of the world, Tennessee's, all play each other throughout the season. Or at least once every other year, or whatever the case may be, however they formulate that schedule. That's a good thing for the sport. It's a good thing for the SEC. And the fact that they continue to argue that they're so mightier than everybody else, therefore, they're exempt from playing the same number of games as other conferences, feels ridiculous and disingenuous at best. So for him to pound the table and say, yeah, I think it's probably a good thing for college football overall if we all get on the same scheduling standard. If we all say, hey, this is what and how we're going to operate going forward, because equity in building college football playoff resumes is important, and it takes some of the human element out of it, because there's never going to be a perfect way to deciding the field of 12, 14, 16, or Eli Drinkwitz, by the way, 30. There's always going to be some human element to it. But if you're able to look at records, look at data, and say 9 conference games versus 9 conference games, etc., it, I think, makes the process a little bit more legitimate, a little bit more credible, which it could undeniably use. So I think that's a good thing. Now, when he's saying there should be a 30-team playoff, that is self-serving. That is Eli Drinkwitz saying, you know what? The chances of Mizzou ever be in the top 12, 14, 16 teams in the country, really difficult. That's a hard thing for Missouri to accomplish. And that's big-time self-awareness. But for them to be one of the 30th best teams in the country, not so hard. Not so hard for Missouri to accomplish. And I understand his thought process / logic a little bit when he says in the NFL there are 14 teams that make the playoffs, and all they have to do is essentially be the best of their 14 pod. The only thing they have to do is be better than the 3 other teams in their division. And their wild cards, yeah, sure, etc. But in his perspective, if you can be in the top 8 of the Southeastern Conference, you should make the college football playoff. I think that that's poppycock. I think it's ridiculous. I hate the idea that the Big Ten gets 4 guaranteed spots and the SEC gets 4 guaranteed spots. I think that is unnatural. I think it's wrong. I think it's the antithesis of everything that competition is supposed to decide. But I understand the thought process and the logic, at least a little bit. I can see the standpoint of is a 30-team college football playoff. Is a 30-team college football playoff remotely feasible? No. But I understand why a head coach at Missouri, just like if you were a head coach at Wake Forest, Syracuse, Indiana, Oklahoma State, would say, hey, 30 is a great number. But let's pump the brakes on that. Just the idea that there's a head coach out there who has the ability to take a 10,000-foot view and say, while this might not be the best thing for me personally or my program, I recognize that for the betterment of the sport, this is the right thing to do, I think deserves a ton of praise, because I wholly recognize that there are so many times that I sit here, or there are other college football pundits and analysts who sit down in front of a microphone and a camera and just bitch and just complain about everything. I think the good things deserve recognition too. So big thumbs up to Eli Drinkwitz for coming out and saying that. Alternatively, big thumbs up to the Big Ten for essentially saying to the SEC, I don't have a super strong feeling about the college football playoff structure going forward. Obviously, they want 4 teams. They want the SEC on board with them, that like we're going to eat up half of the entries to this college football invitational at that point. But if you want us to back your proposal, you mother bleepers are going to play 9 conference games. And I think it's important for the Big Ten to put its foot down. You don't get to say that you're going to get the same amount of college football playoff entries as I do if I am going to purposely give my conference 9 extra losses every year. That's ridiculous. And so how we're going to solve this is I'm going to vote the way you want to on one thing, but I'm getting something in return. And it's something that I have complained about in the past of, like, at times, especially in the college football hierarchy, right? Like, it is very clearly the Big Ten and the SEC are off on their own, in their own stratosphere at this point. For better or worse, fair or unfair, like it or not, it's the Big Ten and SEC at the top and everybody else. And if you're going to be the 2 top dogs, then the top dogs need to at least be somewhat equal. And the way it's constructed right now, is the SEC's expectation is the Big Ten's going to help us do our bidding, but we're going to have our cake and eat it too. And we're going to stay at 8 conference games. The Big Ten stays at 9. Therefore, they look worse because automatically there are 9 extra losses to their conference. And the Big Ten finally said, well, to hell with that. We're not doing that. We're not agreeing to that. Why in the world would I do what you want me to do, but I'm still going to be playing with one arm tied behind my back? That's stupid. It sucks. Figure your stuff out. And for the Big Ten to throw its weight around is something that it hasn't necessarily done in the past. Remember the historic alliance with the Big Ten, ACC, and Pac-12. Well, how did that go? The Big Ten imploded the Pac-12. But they put together this coalition to stand up against the SEC. And now they went, oh, well, hell, it probably is actually better for us if we just operate with the SEC. We can just kind of run this thing however the hell we want, because who's going to tell us no? And so while that is at times a bad thing to have this behemoth that is untoppable, at the same time, sometimes you just got to put it on the table and let people see it. Swing that thing around. And the Big Ten is swinging that thing at the SEC saying, if you want us to back you on this, you're going to get on the same page that we are. And we're going to duke this out on the field the way God intended. And I think that's undeniably the right way to operate. So kudos to Eli Drinkwitz. Kudos to the Big Ten for looking out for the sport as a whole, because we need more people and more power brokers to look out for college football rather than look out for the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, this program over here, that program over there. At some point, everybody's got to worry about the focus and the future of the sport too, because the idea that we can just do whatever the hell we want and the fans are still going to be there and the TV money's still going to be there, hogs get slaughtered. I don't want to see college football become a hog. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.